The champagne was still cold in my hand when I heard the front door slam. 3 years of 18-hour days, living on gas station coffee and determination, had finally paid off. TechFlow Solutions, my little software company that started in our garage, had just been acquired by Microsoft for $12 million. After taxes and splitting with my business partner, I was walking away with $4.8 million. I couldn't wait to tell Sarah. "Honey, you're not going to believe what happened today," I called out, practically bouncing on my feet in our modest kitchen. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was now worth millions, standing in a house we'd bought 15 years ago when I was making 35 grand as a junior developer. Sarah walked in, her face stone cold serious. No smile, no curiosity about my obvious excitement. She was carrying a manila envelope, the kind that usually contains bad news. "Tom, we need to talk," she said, her voice flat and rehearsed. My smile faltered. "Okay, but first, you have to hear—" "No," she cut me off, sliding the envelope across our kitchen table. "This can't wait." I stared at the envelope like it might bite me. "What is this?" "Divorce papers." The champagne bottle slipped from my hand, shattering on the tile floor we'd installed together 3 summers ago. The sound echoed through our suddenly silent house. "What?" I managed to croak. Sarah's composure never wavered. She'd clearly practiced this speech. "Tom, we've grown apart. We want different things. You're content with your little computer business, but I need more. I need security, stability, financial compatibility." Financial compatibility. The words hit me like a slap. If only she knew what I'd just signed 2 hours ago. "Sarah, if you'd just let me explain—" "I've already spoken to a lawyer," she continued as if reading from a script. "I'm not asking for much. Just half the house, half your business assets, and reasonable spousal support until I get back on my feet." I looked at my wife of 16 years. Really looked at her. When had she become this cold, calculating stranger? Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, even though it was 7 p.m. on a Tuesday. She was dressed like she was going somewhere important. "You've been planning this," I said. "It wasn't a question." "Tom, please don't make this harder than it needs to be. Sign the papers. We can both move on with our lives." I picked up the papers with trembling hands. The lawyer's letterhead read, "Morrison Black and Associates, the most expensive divorce firm in the city." How was Sarah affording this? Her part-time job at the marketing agency barely covered her car payment. "I need time to think about this," I said. "There's nothing to think about. It's over, Tom. It's been over for a long time." Something in her tone made me look up. There was something else. Someone else. I could see it in her eyes the way she kept glancing at her phone, the expensive perfume I didn't recognize. "Who is he?" I asked quietly. Sarah's mask slipped for just a second. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The guy you're leaving me for. Who is he?" She recovered quickly, but not quickly enough. "This isn't about anyone else. This is about us growing apart." I almost told her then. Almost threw the acquisition papers on the table and watched her face crumble as she realized what she was walking away from. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the lawyer's business card tucked into the divorce papers. Maybe it was the way she'd choreographed this whole scene. Maybe it was pure spite. Instead, I signed the papers. Sarah blinked, clearly surprised. "That's it? What did you expect? A fight? Begging?" I shrugged. "You're right. We want different things. You want financial security, and I'm just a guy with a little computer business." She actually looked disappointed that I wasn't putting up more of a fight. "Tom, when do you want me out?" "You can stay until we sell the house. I'll be staying at my sister's." Her sister lived in a studio apartment. Sarah was definitely staying somewhere else. After she left, taking 2 suitcases she'd clearly packed in advance, I sat in my empty house and laughed. Not a happy laugh. The kind of laugh that comes when the universe plays a joke so cosmic that you either laugh or lose your mind. I'd become a millionaire and lost my wife on the same day. And she had no idea what she'd just walked away from. 3 weeks into my new life as a secretly wealthy, recently divorced man, I was learning things about my ex-wife that I wished I could unknow. I'd hired a forensic accountant named Janet Pierce, a sharp woman in her 50s, who specialized in tracking hidden assets in divorce cases. What she found made my blood boil. "Your wife has been very busy," Janet said, spreading documents across my new apartment's dining table. I'd moved into a modest two-bedroom place, maintaining the illusion that I was struggling financially. She's been moving money for over a year. What kind of money? She barely made $25,000 at that marketing job. Janet pulled out a bank statement. Joint account transfers, small amounts, never more than $1,000 at a time. Always on days when you were traveling for business. She's moved almost $15,000 into accounts you don't have access to. My jaw clenched. $15,000 was a significant chunk of our savings. Savings I'd built from freelance work and careful budgeting while building my company. There's more, Janet continued. She's been working with someone who knows financial systems. The transfers were structured to avoid automatic notifications. Someone taught her how to do this. Her lover? Most likely. And Tom, this person isn't just some random guy. Look at this. She handed me a printout of LLC filings. 3 shell companies, all registered in the past 8 months. Your wife is listed as a beneficial owner on 2 of them. I studied the papers. What do these companies do? On paper, consulting services? In reality, they're vehicles for hiding assets. Someone's been preparing for this divorce a lot longer than 3 weeks. That evening, I did something I never thought I'd do. I drove past Sarah's sister's apartment building. Her car wasn't there, it never was. So, where was she really staying? I got my answer 2 days later when my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, cornered me while I was getting my mail. Tom, I'm so sorry about you and Sarah, she said, her voice dripping with the kind of sympathy that comes with juicy gossip. I had no idea she was seeing someone. What do you mean? Mrs. Chen looked around conspiratorially. Well, I probably shouldn't say anything, but I saw her with a man at Chez Laurent last week. Very cozy, if you know what I mean. Expensive place, too. My daughter works there as a hostess. Chez Laurent was the most upscale restaurant in the city. Dinner for 2 would cost more than Sarah made in a week. Did your daughter recognize the man? Oh, yes, he's been there before. Drives a white BMW, always pays cash, big tipper. She said his name was Richard something. Richard Blackwood, I think? Richard Blackwood. The name sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. That night, I did what any self-respecting tech guy would do. I Googled him. Richard Blackwood, 42, was a wealth management advisor with Morrison Financial Group. His LinkedIn profile was polished, professional, and full of testimonials from satisfied clients. His company bio mentioned his specialization in discrete asset management and financial planning for high-net-worth individuals. The pieces clicked into place. Morrison Financial Group. Morrison Black & Associates, Sarah's divorce lawyers. It wasn't a coincidence. I dug deeper. Richard's firm managed portfolios worth millions. He lived in a penthouse downtown, drove luxury cars, and according to his social media presence, enjoyed an expensive lifestyle. But something didn't add up. I cross-referenced his business filings with the shell companies Janet had found. Richard Blackwood wasn't just Sarah's lover, he was her business partner in fraud. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We need to talk urgently. Please call me. Sarah. I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it without responding. Sarah's urgent messages escalated over the next week. Texts became phone calls. Phone calls became voicemails. Voicemails became increasingly desperate. Tom, please call me back. There's been a misunderstanding. Tom, I know you're getting these messages. We need to discuss our situation. Tom, this is serious. Call me. I ignored them all. Instead, I spent my time working with Janet to build a comprehensive picture of Sarah and Richard's financial scheme. What we discovered was breathtaking in its scope and stupidity. They'd been running a classic affinity fraud operation. Richard would identify wealthy clients, gain their trust, then convince them to invest in exclusive opportunities the shell companies Sarah helped manage. The money would disappear into offshore accounts, leaving the investors with worthless paper. But they'd made a crucial mistake. They'd used our joint accounts for some of the initial transfers, making me an unwitting accomplice in their scheme. Tom, you need to see this, Janet said during our 4th meeting. She looked pale. I found something that changes everything. She handed me a stack of bank records. Richard's been playing your wife. Look at these transactions. I scanned the documents. Over the past 6 months, large sums had moved from the shell companies into accounts controlled solely by Richard. Sarah's name had been quietly removed from the signature cards. She doesn't know, does she? I asked. I don't think so. As far as she's concerned, she's sitting on a nest egg worth about $200,000. In reality, Richard's been systematically draining the accounts. She's got maybe 10,000 left, and that's in accounts that are about to be frozen. Frozen? Janet's expression was grim. Tom, the FBI is investigating Richard's firm. It's all over the financial industry news. He's been running this scam for years, and it's finally caught up with him. When they arrest him, and they will, Sarah's going to be named as a co-conspirator. My phone rang. Sarah's number. This time, I answered. Tom, thank God. Her voice was shaky, desperate. We need to meet. Tonight. Why the sudden urgency, Sarah? I can't discuss this over the phone. Can you meet me at Murphy's Bar? 8 o'clock? Murphy's Bar was where we'd had our first date 17 years ago. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. I'll be there. I arrived early and chose a table with a clear view of the entrance. Sarah walked in at exactly 8, looking nothing like the composed woman who'd served me divorce papers a month ago. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smudged, and she kept glancing over her shoulder, like she expected someone to follow her. She slid into the booth across from me, her hands trembling as she reached for the wine I'd ordered for her. Her favorite, a Pinot Grigio she could never afford on her salary. Tom, I made a terrible mistake, she began. Which one? The affair, the fraud, or the divorce? She flinched. You know about Richard. I know about a lot of things, Sarah. The question is, what do you know? I know that you're not the man I thought I was married to. I almost laughed. Really? Because I'm exactly the same man I was a month ago. Same job, same income, same everything. The only thing that's changed is your perception. Sarah pulled out her phone and showed me a screenshot of a news article. TechFlow Solutions acquired by Microsoft for $12 million, the headline read. Below it was a photo of me shaking hands with a Microsoft executive. When were you going to tell me? She asked. Tell you what, we're divorced, remember? My financial situation is no longer your concern. Tom, please. I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. We can get remarried. We can be a team again. I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. A team? Like you and Richard were a team? Sarah's composure cracked. That wasn't supposed to happen. It just developed. But it's over now. He's not who I thought he was. What happened, Sarah? Did he take your money and run? Her silence was answer enough. How much did you lose? Everything, she whispered. The accounts are frozen. The FBI came to my hotel this morning asking questions. Richard's gone. His office is empty. His phone's disconnected. Tom, I think I'm in serious trouble. I pulled out my phone and activated the recording app. Tell me about the shell companies. How do you... She stopped, realization dawning. You've been investigating me. Just like you investigated me before filing for divorce. Fair's fair. Sarah looked around the bar nervously. Tom, I can't discuss this here. There might be people listening. Then let's go somewhere more private. I stood up. Your choice. We can talk in my car, or you can talk to the FBI alone. She followed me to the parking lot, her desperation palpable. Once we were in my car, I turned on the interior light and placed my phone on the dashboard, making sure she could see it recording. Start from the beginning, I said. When did you first meet Richard? Sarah's story unfolded like a masterclass in manipulation and greed. She'd met Richard 8 months ago when she'd started working part-time for a marketing agency that handled his firm's advertising. He'd been charming, sophisticated, everything I apparently wasn't. He made me feel special, she said, tears streaming down her face. He said I was wasting my potential being married to someone with no ambition. So you decided to help him steal from his clients? It wasn't stealing, she protested. He said they were investment opportunities. High-risk, high-reward ventures that only sophisticated investors could understand. And the shell companies? Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. He said we needed corporate structures to protect the investments. I signed papers, but I didn't understand what they meant. He handled all the financial details. I studied her face in the dim light of the parking lot. Even now, even after being completely betrayed by Richard, she was still trying to minimize her role. Sarah, you moved $15,000 from our joint accounts into those shell companies. You did that deliberately, in small amounts, while I was out of town. That's not accidental. That's premeditated. She broke down completely then, sobbing into her hands. I know, but Tom, you have to understand. I was desperate. We were living paycheck to paycheck, never getting ahead. Richard showed me bank statements, investment returns. He was making more in a month than you made in a year. So, you decided to divorce me and take half of everything I'd built. The divorce was Richard's idea. He said clean breaks were better, that we could start fresh without any complications from your business debts. Business debts. The irony was staggering. What did Richard tell you about my company's value? He did some research. Said TechFlow was probably worth maybe $50,000 at most. And that was if you could find a buyer. He said most small software companies fail within 5 years. I couldn't help but smile. Richard's research skills need work. Tom, please, Sarah grabbed my arm. I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you. But we can fix this. You're wealthy now. We can pay back the investors. Make this right. We? I'm still your wife. Legally, I mean. The divorce isn't final yet. I pulled my arm free. Sarah, you're not my wife. You're a co-conspirator in a federal fraud case who happens to share my last name for a few more weeks. But if we got back together, if we presented a united front, you want me to use my money to clean up your mess? Our mess, she corrected. The joint account transfers make you a participant, whether you knew it or not. There it was, the threat beneath the tears. She was right, of course. The FBI would want to know why I hadn't noticed $15,000 disappearing from accounts I had access to. They'd want to know about my sudden wealth, the timing of everything. How much trouble are we talking about? I asked. Sarah pulled out a folder I hadn't noticed her carrying. Richard's firm managed over $50 million. The FBI thinks at least $20 million is missing. The shell companies we created processed about $2 million in fraudulent investments. I whistled low. That's serious federal time. Richard's gone, Tom. Disappeared completely. The FBI thinks he's fled the country, but they're treating everyone else as co-conspirators until proven otherwise. Everyone else meaning you, meaning us. Your name is on some of the bank records. The joint account transfers create a paper trail that leads directly to you. I sat back in my seat processing this information. Sarah had managed to implicate me in a multi-million-dollar fraud scheme while trying to divorce me and steal half my assets. It was almost impressive in its thoroughness. What do you want from me, Sarah? Help me fix this. We get remarried, present ourselves as victims of Richard's manipulation. You're a successful businessman now. You have credibility. We cooperate with the FBI, help them understand that we were duped. And in exchange, we split everything 50-50, like we should have from the beginning. I looked at my ex-wife, this woman I'd loved for 16 years, who'd betrayed me in ways I was still discovering, and felt something cold settle in my chest. I need to think about this, I said finally. Tom, there isn't time to think. The FBI wants to interview me again tomorrow. If I don't have answers, if I don't have a plan, you'll go to prison. She nodded, fresh tears starting. Give me 24 hours, I said. I'll have an answer for you tomorrow night. As Sarah got out of my car, she turned back one more time. Tom, I know I don't deserve your help, but we were good together once. We can be good together again. I watched her walk to her rental car. Apparently her BMW had been repossessed, and drive away. Then, I called Janet Pierce. Janet, it's Tom. I need you to work through the night. We're going to war. The next evening, I was hosting a charity gala for the local children's hospital, my first public event as a wealthy philanthropist. The venue was the Grand Ballroom at the Marriott, the same hotel where Sarah and I had celebrated our 10th wedding anniversary. I'd chosen it deliberately. The guest list included local business leaders, politicians, and journalists. I'd also made sure to invite several FBI agents who specialized in financial crimes, introducing them as friends from the federal government who care about children's causes. Sarah arrived at 8:30, just as I was finishing my welcome speech. She looked stunning in a black cocktail dress that probably cost more than our old monthly mortgage payment. She'd clearly spent her last available credit on looking the part of a wealthy man's wife. I watched her work the room, networking like a professional. She introduced herself to everyone as Tom's wife, glossing over the awkward detail of our pending divorce. Several people mentioned how proud she must be of my success, how wonderful it was that we were giving back to the community. At 9 o'clock, I took the microphone again. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your generous support tonight. Before we continue with the auction, I'd like to share a personal story about the importance of truth and accountability. Sarah, standing near the back of the room, gave me an encouraging smile. She thought I was about to announce our reconciliation. 6 weeks ago, I was a struggling small business owner, working 18-hour days to build something meaningful. I was married to a woman I thought I knew, living a life I thought we'd built together. The room was quiet, attentive. This wasn't the usual charity gala speech. Then two things happened on the same day. I sold my company for enough money to change our lives forever. And my wife served me with divorce papers, citing our financial incompatibility. A murmur ran through the crowd. Sarah's smile faltered. What I didn't know was that my wife had been planning her exit for months, working with a financial advisor named Richard Blackwood to hide assets and prepare for a future that didn't include me. Sarah started moving toward the exit, but I'd positioned security guards at all the doors, ostensibly for the event, but actually to prevent anyone from leaving during my speech. What I also didn't know was that Richard Blackwood was running a Ponzi scheme, and my wife was helping him defraud his clients through a network of shell companies. The murmur became a buzz of shocked conversation. Sarah had stopped trying to leave and was staring at me with undisguised horror. The FBI is currently investigating the disappearance of over $20 million from Richard's firm. My wife, Sarah Halley, was a key participant in this scheme, using our joint accounts to facilitate fraudulent transfers. I nodded to Agent Patricia Morrison, who I'd seated at the head table. She stood up, her FBI credentials clearly visible. "Mrs. Halley," Agent Morrison called out, "we'd like to speak with you." The room erupted. Cameras flashed as local news photographers captured Sarah's expression of pure panic. She looked around desperately, finally locking eyes with me across the crowded ballroom. "Tom, please," she called out, her voice carrying over the chaos. "Don't do this. We can work together." I walked over to her, the crowd parting to let me through. When I reached her, I spoke quietly, but the room was silent enough that everyone could hear. "Sarah, you're absolutely right. We should work together. That's why I've spent the past month documenting every fraudulent transaction, every hidden account, every lie you told. I've given it all to the FBI." Her face went white. "You recorded our conversation last night. Every word, including your admission that you knowingly participated in creating shell companies to hide stolen money." Agent Morrison approached with two other agents. "Sarah Halley, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud and money laundering." As they read Sarah her rights, she kept staring at me. "Tom, I'm your wife. How can you do this to me?" "Ex-wife," I corrected. "The divorce was finalized this afternoon. I didn't contest anything. You can have half of the $50,000 Richard told you my company was worth." The agents led Sarah away in handcuffs. The crowd was buzzing with excitement. This was the kind of drama that would be talked about for years. I returned to the microphone one final time. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption. Sometimes justice can't wait for a more convenient moment. Now, let's get back to helping some children." The auction raised over $200,000 for the Children's Hospital. It was the most successful charity event in the hotel's history. 3 months later, I was sitting in a federal courthouse watching Sarah's plea hearing. She'd been held without bail. Apparently, the FBI had found evidence that she'd been planning to flee the country with what remained of the stolen money. Richard Blackwood had been arrested in the Cayman Islands, living in a beachfront villa purchased with his client's retirement savings. He'd immediately started cooperating with authorities, providing detailed records of Sarah's involvement in the scheme. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Lisa Chen, laid out the case methodically. Sarah and Richard had defrauded 17 investors of over $3.2 million. The shell companies Sarah helped create had processed fraudulent transactions worth $2.8 million. The money had been systematically stolen over 18 months, with Sarah receiving approximately $180,000 for her participation. Your Honor, Prosecutor Chen said, the defendant was not a naive victim of Mr. Blackwood's manipulation. Bank records show that she researched offshore banking procedures, personally opened accounts in 3 different states, and actively recruited potential investors through her social media networks. Sarah's court-appointed attorney, she couldn't afford the expensive divorce lawyers anymore, tried to paint her as a victim of financial abuse, but the evidence was overwhelming. Janet Pierce had done her job perfectly. When it came time for Sarah's allocution, she stood up in her orange jumpsuit and spoke in a barely audible voice. Your Honor, I take full responsibility for my actions. I knowingly participated in a scheme to defraud investors. I created false documents, opened fraudulent accounts, and helped hide stolen money. I did this because I was greedy and thought I deserved a better life than I had earned. She glanced back at me, sitting in the gallery. I betrayed my husband, who trusted me completely. I tried to steal from him while stealing from others. I have no excuse for my behavior. The judge sentenced her to 4 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. She was also ordered to pay $2.8 million in restitution, money she didn't have and would never have. After the hearing, I walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sunshine. My phone buzzed with a text from my daughter Emily, who was starting college in the fall. Dad, saw the news coverage. Proud of you for doing the right thing. Love you. Emily had been devastated when she learned about her mother's crimes, but she'd supported my decision to cooperate with the FBI. Mom made her choices, she'd said. You shouldn't have to pay for them. That evening, I was in my new house, a modest place in a good neighborhood, nothing flashy, when the doorbell rang. It was Agent Morrison. Mr. Halley, I wanted to thank you personally, she said. Your cooperation helped us recover almost $2 million for the victims. Without your forensic accounting and those recordings, we might never have been able to prove the full scope of the conspiracy. I'm just glad those people will get some of their money back. Most of it, actually. Richard kept better records than he realized. And your ex-wife's shell companies made the money easier to trace than if he'd worked alone. Agent Morrison handed me an envelope. The U.S. Attorney wanted you to have this. Inside was a letter of commendation from the Department of Justice, recognizing my assistance in the investigation. It would look good framed next to my business awards. After Agent Morrison left, I poured myself a glass of wine, not champagne this time, and sat on my back deck. The house was quiet, peaceful. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. My phone rang, unknown number. Hello? Tom, it's me. Sarah's voice calling from prison. How did you get this number? I'm allowed 1 phone call a week. Tom, I need to tell you something. Sarah, we have nothing to discuss. Please just listen. I found out why Richard targeted me. Despite myself, I was curious. What do you mean? He knew about your company. He knew about the potential Microsoft deal. He'd been tracking tech acquisitions for months, looking for companies that might be worth more than they appeared. I sat up straighter. What are you saying? He planned the whole thing, Tom. The affair, the divorce, everything. He wanted to get me half of your assets before you realized how much your company was worth. But the deal wasn't public until he had inside information. His firm managed money for several Microsoft executives. He knew about their acquisition strategy months in advance. The pieces clicked into place. Richard hadn't just been running a simple Ponzi scheme. He'd been conducting corporate espionage, using his wealth management business to gather insider information about potential acquisitions. Sarah, are you telling me that you were manipulated too? I'm telling you that I was greedy and stupid, but Richard was playing a much bigger game than either of us realized. The FBI thinks he made over $10 million trading on insider information over the past 3 years. I was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Tom, I know I can never make this right. I know you'll never forgive me. But I wanted you to know that part of what happened to us wasn't accidental. We were targeted. That doesn't excuse what you did. No, it doesn't. But maybe it explains why someone like Richard was interested in someone like me. I wasn't special. I was useful. The line went quiet except for the background noise of the prison. Sarah, why are you telling me this? Because in 4 years, when I get out, I want to be the kind of person who tells the truth, even when it doesn't help me. She hung up. I sat on my deck for a long time that night, thinking about truth, justice, and the price of revenge. Sarah would spend the next 4 years in federal prison, her career destroyed, her reputation ruined. Richard would spend the next 15 years behind bars, his wealth confiscated, his victims partially compensated. And I would spend the rest of my life knowing that I'd chosen justice over mercy, truth over loyalty, and revenge over forgiveness. The next morning, I established the Sarah Halley Foundation for Financial Literacy, dedicated to teaching people how to recognize and avoid investment fraud. It seemed like the right kind of irony. 6 months later, Sarah's first letter arrived from prison. She was teaching other inmates about financial planning and working toward a degree in social work. She'd found purpose in helping people avoid the mistakes she'd made. I never wrote back, but I kept the letters. Someday, when enough time had passed, maybe I'd forgive her. But forgiveness, I'd learned, was different from trust. And trust, once broken so completely, might never be repaired. The divorce had cost Sarah everything. The revenge had given me justice. But the truth had given us both something unexpected, a chance to become better people than we'd been when we were married. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people face the consequences of their own choices. Sarah had chosen greed over loyalty, lies over truth, and betrayal over love. She'd gotten exactly what she'd chosen, and so had I. I'd chosen to be the kind of man who stands up for what's right, even when it's painful, even when it costs everything. It was the best choice I'd ever made.